Welcome to this presentation of the 2014 versions of Interform400 and InterformNG. First, a short introduction. If I should give a description of the major changes here, I would call this the barcode revolution, indicating that there has been major changes for how we handle barcodes in both products. What I'll do is that I will first cover Interform400. First, a PowerPoint presentation to go through the main new features, and after that we will go a step deeper into the details of all the new addition and changes in the 2014 version. After Interform400, I will do the same for InterformNG. First a PowerPoint to let you know the main features, and then we'll dig a bit deeper and look at the details. And finally, a little information about videos on YouTube. So as mentioned, there's a change for how we handle barcodes in Interform400. If you're using the simple line barcodes, Interleaf 205, EIN code 39 or code 128, then we're actually using subfonts in order to create these barcodes in PCL. So it means previously, if you used a barcode in an overlay, the barcode then selects a barcode font number, and through auto download, this barcode font number is linked with the barcode subfont. So it means that if you have a change, if you want to change the size of this barcode, you will need to delete all of these three elements and create a new barcode again. With the change, all you need to do is just create a barcode font number. You are able to see the parameters you specified when you created that font number, and simply just go back and edit that if you want. So much easier to work with. For the ZPL output, we have also simplified things, and now we're using some fixed prefixes in the commands in the data stream. We are no longer saving and restoring the printer configuration during the printing process. So these changes means that we now are able to print on Zebra ZT230 printers, and the setup is easier, and we expect fewer problems when using Interform400 with non-Zebra ZPL compatible printers. For the graphical designer, we're now able to find the origin of any element in the result window, even if they comes from a conditioned or unconditioned overlay. We can copy and paste conditioned overlays, and if you have a huge design, and when I'm talking about huge, I mean a main overlay calling up to 100 conditioned sub-overlays, where each sub-overlay is scanning line 1 to 100. Then it can take a while to render the result window, and now we have a timeout for rendering, so it means simply that the result window won't be perhaps fully created or fully updated, but the good side is that now you will have better performance even when editing such a complex overlay. For emailing, with the email finishing definition, we have now support for 99 variables instead of the previous 9. So with 99 variables, you can, for instance, copy a normal spoof file page and convert that into variables that you can include in the email contents. Again, for emailing, we have the work mail log command, and we have added new parameters on the command, so customers that are using this command with user menus can now directly get the subset of their choice when they get in there. There are also more fields for subsetting the list of emails, so it's easier to search for a specific email, and we can even forward any email to a new receiver if we, for instance, we found that we sent an email to the wrong person. It is possible with the 2014 versions of Interform to embed images. If you sending out images in the contents of the email with the previous versions of Interform, then you would need in your HTML to have a link to a global image that is globally available, and that has the consequence that when the receiver receives this, you might need to right-click on the email in order to download those referenced images, or even worse, you could have a broken link that you have deleted these images in the meantime. So here is the new, better alternative, that you can now use images directly in the IFS. So these images are now embedded in the HTML data stream and included as a part of the email. So immediately when you open up that email, you will see those images straight away. Additions for export-import. Well, now we can export and import the auto-download configuration. That's why you link font numbers with the subfonts. And not only that, but you can also, when you have chosen to export an overlay and any font numbers used by that overlay, you can now also choose to export the referenced subfonts and auto-download that are referring to the font numbers you have already exported. As mentioned, we are no longer using a subfont for the simple line barcodes EIN, code 128, code 39 and interleaf 205. But we are creating a subfont and including that in the export library when you are exporting any of these barcode font numbers. So it means that we are backwards compatible, and if you import such an export file in the older versions, you can simply install not only the font number but also this special font subfont and link them together in auto download. Final main feature of Interform400, a sign pad module. We already have the PDF security module, of course, with Interform, where you're able to digitally sign a PDF file and password protect it and limit what you are able to do with that PDF. But here we're talking about a real signature, that you are signing a PDF file with a pad. So Interform400 is able to create the original PDF file, of course. We move that on to a PC where we have this signpad client installed, and the signpad here is connected to the PC via USB. You see the document that you're signing with a designated area for your signature. You sign, and the signed PDF file goes back into Interform, where you can set up rules if you want to print, archive or email, or all three, of course, of this new signed PDF file. You should have a dedicated output queue or job, because this job that is doing the sign process here is standing idle, waiting for this sign procedure signature to be added. So this covers the main features of Interform400, but let's go into details and see what more we have. So as mentioned, there are no more subfonts. Makes it much easier to use these font numbers. If you take a quick look at it, it's actually quite simple. If we go 80 fonts, we can create a new one. F6. So you can type your description, a height. This height is of course measured in dots per inch. 600 dots equals 1 inch. So if I want half an inch, I type 300. Size, and then I don't want these. So that's it. I've created this new barcode, and if I want to change the size, I can go back and change it. I can see whatever I typed first time. So much easier to work with. Code 128 barcodes. Well, previous versions, if you were unlucky, you could generate, or Interform could generate this sequence in the output data stream. And that is a problem for Kyocera printers, as this triggers prescribed commands. But now we're scanning the output data stream for that, and making sure that you won't get that anymore in the output. A previous workaround was to go into the barcode font number and set that you only wanted character set B only. So with this change, you don't need this workaround anymore. We have a command called printIF to be able to print TIFF files in PCL, and with a new shrink parameter, we can shrink the image so it fits within the paper size that we are using with this command. The Interleave205 barcodes were previously a little bit too much to the right, so we have chosen here with the 2014 version to correct that, and that means that if you upgrade from a previous version, you might see, or you will see your Interleave205 barcodes move a bit to the left, and we're talking about a few millimeters, but now the position you have stated will be correct also in PCL. We have a possibility to embed files in the output PDF. That has been possible for over a year now. The old trim feature only trimmed the trailing blanks, but with the new trim option, we trim not only trailing but also leading blanks. We have these &IMG commands that you can use in your spoof file to dynamically include images from the IFS or even from external HTTP server. With this, you can also use TIFF images from the IFS, and now these TIFF images can also be scaled to fit a specific size. The same command &IMG is available for ZPL output, and that also of course selects any TIFF image from the IFS, but the downside is that we will download that image to the printer each time we include it, unless you use this new feature with option K in position 6 of this command. So it means that we tell the printer to keep this image in the printer memory for this spoof file. So if we meet the same image again within the same spoof file, we won't include that in the data stream. So it means that the data stream for the printer will be smaller and the printer performance will be better. You can keep up to 25 images in the printer memory within one spoof file. It is possible with Interform400 to burn these RFID tags on ZPL, special ZPL printers. This is now been extended with a new EPC format. The ZPL2 printer output has been changed. Previously, you could tell Interform to save the printer configuration, do some temporary changes, and then restore the printer configuration. But that is no longer available and has been simplified. So let me just go into the configuration here. Yeah. So you have only this available now. We will use these prefixes for the commands in the ZPL data stream for the complete data stream. Previously, we would use these in the beginning and then change to some very low hex fixed values. So with this change, we expect less problems with non-Zebra ZPL compatible printers, and it also works with a new ZT230 printer from Zebra. Another addition is support for a new Aztec barcode, which is now supported for ZPL2 output. Yeah. Then we have some changes for the graphical designer. With the previous versions of Interform, it could be a bit hard to find the origin of various elements here in the result view. If the element has been inserted in the main overlay, then it's simply a matter of clicking the element, and then it will be selected here in the element list. But in this case we have a frame that's inserted by a conditioned overlay, and if I click it won't show me where it comes from, but with Control key down and I click here, now it would actually be selected here so I can see exactly where this comes from. So as mentioned, another change is that the rendering, the creation update of the result window here times out if you're editing a huge overlay. Another addition is that you can now copy and paste conditioned overlays. So if we want not only to check on the capital I here in this position, but also on the capital P, then we have changed our overlay like that. Another addition is that we can, when we insert elements, or actually when we position elements, we can of course always just click in the result view, but you can also type the positions here. And if you want to do that and you have a position that's less than 1, then you don't need a preceding 0 anymore. You just type a comma or a dot and whatever you want as position, and you can see here that Interform will then add itself the preceding 0. Another addition is that if you create either a conditioned or unconditioned sub-overlay, then the size of the new sub-overlay will be the same as the size of the new of the existing main overlay. So it means that if you would exit this main overlay and edit the other sub-overlay directly, then you will see something that's closer to the actual output. I mentioned earlier the change regarding embedding local images in HTML. So let's take a look at that. We go with the mail log. With the older versions of Interform400, we could have a link to an image that's globally available, and it can look like this if the mail client has been configured not to download these images. So then I would need to right click and say download, and now we see the images. But it can be even worse if we have a broken link. Then we're right clicking, but now the link is wrong or the image has been deleted, so we are no longer able to see the correct email as we wanted. Okay, so what is the alternative? Well, the alternative is to either include a fixed single image that we can refer to in either in the send email command and also in the email finishing definition, or we can also refer to a path in the finishing definition and then just include the name of the image in HTML. So how would that look in the email finishing definition? Well, let's take a look. So in the finishing definition, we have here the possibility to refer to a single image, and you do that through the new feature, new option 13, mail text embedded images. So here I type the complete path in the IFS, including the file name, and then I just need to refer to this in my HTML to include that image. An alternative, and what I think is a better alternative, is to include the path in the finishing definition for option 13, and here we include the path and then we just type the name in HTML. As a remark here, I would like to let you know that you can also use variables as part of the file or directory here, so it makes it even more dynamic. So what is then the result of the output if you go with this? Well, let's take a look at the work mail log again. So if we take the example here where we are using these local images for all and open this email, Well, now you can see that we see all of the images directly. We don't need to right click or anything, it's already there. So how is it actually specified in HTML? Well, for a single image, it's embedded like this. It's how there. For the other example where we are including only the path in the email finishing definition, then we are here including the images, only the image name. And it is possible actually to include an image here with a path, but then we will ignore that path when we're using it in Interform. But you could use a temporary path, for instance referring to images on the C drive when you are editing your HTML. Previously you could use up to 9 variables in the email finishing definition. That has now been extended up to 99 variables. So that makes it possible to actually convert a complete spoof file page and include that in the contents of the email. And I have an example of that. Just look at this email. So here I've taken the first 20 lines from my spoof file and included this as text here. And how can we do that in HTML? Well, it's just a matter of referring to the variables, and that is actually something that has been available for quite a while, for several years. We are now using a 2-digit number for the variables, so we're normally using a preceding 0 for V1 to 9, but the older variables without this 0 is also supported, of course. A new format has been added if you want to call a user program from the email finishing definition, and that includes the possibility to transfer the 99 variables. The work mail log command has been extended. So let's take a look at that. First of all, there are new parameters on the command. So if you build in the command into a user menu, you can already make a subset, so they don't need to type that subset when they get in, but they get a list of the things that they actually want to look at. So when you're in here, you can change the subset with F15, where you have the same options. So you can search, for instance, for a specific text in the subject, interval of time and date, specific status, or whatever you want to limit the list of emails. And the final new feature of work mail log is that you can take an email and forward it to another receiver directly from this menu or command. So if I want to forward this email, I simply use option 16, type in the new receiver, and that's it. We already covered the signature pad support. There will be more information later about this module. Regarding installation and upgrade, we are now requiring version 5 release 4 or higher in order to install the 2014 versions. We have been happy with version 5.3 for quite a while, but we want to use the new functionality available in the newer OS 400, so that is why we need to take this step. Installation is no longer possible via SSD. There's simply not enough room to burn the necessary files onto the CD. So now you should do a installation from the save file that we are including for instance through the restore libpc tool that we are including as a part of the package. For customers running Interform400 on a mirrored machine, for those installations, it's normal that you do mirroring by adding as good as any object in the Interform400 library into the journal, so all changes for any object will be replicated to the other machine. But that normally causes a problem when you do an upgrade with Interform400. In previous versions you would just get an error message when we tried to rename the APF3012 library and saying that there was an object lock. You needed to look into the job log a bit carefully in order to find out the real reason. So now we are helping customers a bit more. So the first thing we do when you do an upgrade is to check this journal for any objects journaled, and if anyone has added journaling of more objects than we are normally journaling, then we will include a screen to tell about these extra objects. So it will look like this. We will list all the objects and suggest that you end journaling with any of these commands. As mentioned, we are not using soft fonts for the simple line barcodes anymore. And for customers upgrading from a pre-2014 version, that may have a consequence, because we are now using a font number only, and that means that the output will be exactly the same for both PCL and PDF. Previously we would use a soft font for the PCL output only. Some customers might have changed the font number in an effort to try to change the size of the barcode, but actually that causes only a change of the barcode size in PDF, not in PCL. So when such a customer would upgrade, then we will actually look into the soft font that is linked with that barcode, and we will use the soft font as the basis of the size of the new barcode font number. So it means that when you upgrade, the PCL output will always be the same, but if you have messed around, I should say, with the font number size, then the PDF result might change. But if we are unable to find any linked soft font, then we'll use the settings of the font number itself as the basis of the new barcode size. In Autoforms Control, you can use option 8 to call a user program, but now you can choose to run this program under any user profile. Previously you could run it only under an AFC upper or the owner of the spool file. If you want to call or want to get into the Autoforms Control menu directly, you should use this command. It's also mentioned here in the manual. This command is really not that interesting. It shows you some information about a data queue, if it's a FIFO or not. First in, first out. The auto download information can now be exported and imported. I will say that is definitely something that I would like to show you. So if you go with service function and export and do to copy, then we can, for a normal copy, normal export, we can choose now to export auto download definitions, and for instance select specific definitions for export. For the PCL printer groups, you should please note that you can only export the ones that are including the output queue * all PCL. So it's definitely recommended to go with only one PCL printer group that's valid for all PCL output, and that's the one you can export and import here with Interform. Okay, you can export and import specific auto download information, but you can also do what I would normally do for exporting, start out by exporting your overlays, then run option 3 to export any resource referenced by the overlay, so that could be images and font numbers, for instance. And then if you run option 4 after that, then we will go even a step deeper and say, you have exported these font numbers and they are actually referenced in these auto-download definitions, so you would probably also want to export those. And these auto-download definitions are in turn referring to these subfonts, and you probably also want to export those. So that is definitely helpful to export everything that you need in order to replicate the setup on another machine. As mentioned, we are no longer using subfonts for these simple line barcodes in PCL PDF, but if you export any of those, then we are actually creating a subfont in that export distribution. And let's take a look at how that looks. So you see it here. So the barcode subfont added into the export will be called bar CDE for barcode, followed by a 4-digit number, which is the number of the barcode font number. The import APF resources command has been available for quite a while. It's a feature that makes it possible for a customer to copy an export file or the resources in an export file directly into production without going into the import menu and then step by step moving this into production. So it's like a quick and easy way to import resources. But this command previously only supported a save file as the media for export or import, but now it also supports a normal export stream file placed in the IFS. So that actually concludes all the new stuff in Interform400. Apart from that, there are, as usual, additions and changes to the manual, especially the settings for label printing. They are now thoroughly described here on page 59. For the graphical designer, there were previously quite a lot of cross-references when you read the manual for the various design elements, referring to the 5250 designer, but now these details have been updated and placed where they should be in the description of the graphical designer. There are also some tips about how to set up and make the best use of the graphical designer. For instance, you can get this error message unable to load color model. If you do so, then it's just a matter of changing a server on the host or opening a port in a firewall. If you're using two-type fonts in a design, then it's important to install these two-type fonts also on the PC that's running the graphical designer if you want to be able to see an output that's quite close to the final output. For multi-code page setups, it's actually possible to decide which code page you want to use in the graphical designer, and that can be set up on your user profile in the Interform400 menu. So this is also described in details. And also for the work mail log command, you see the status on the right for each outgoing email, and each of these error statuses are now described in the manual to explain exactly why do you see this status, or if you see a status sent even though it hasn't arrived, why can that be? So that's explained here in the manual now. For label printing, we do support ZPL and IPL for Intermag printer language. There are, however, some limitations for the IPL language compared with ZPL, so that's why we recommend customers to buy ZPL compatible Zebra printers for the maximum support. It is possible with Interform to split up a spoof file with this command, split spoof file, and have added a little tip in the manual to illustrate how you can implement this in your user programs. The export-import features of Interform can probably do a bit more than you actually think. It is possible to rename resources in the export and import library, and then all of these cross-references will be updated. So this is now described in Appendix P, where it's also described which objects or which configuration that cannot be exported and imported. As mentioned earlier, it's a very good idea to use just a single PCL printer group. This is also emphasized here in the manual. You can send out emails with the email finishing definition, but also with these commands: merge spoof file PDF, send email, and send mail. And for all of these, the default sender is *current, and that actually refers to some email configuration of the current user profile in the system directory. So if you forget to set up a sender's email address for these commands, then you will get a cryptic error message indicating that something is missing in system directory. This error message is now included in the manual, and also the solution, which simply is to add an sender's email address. For the emailing, we support a Blue Series Mail integration, but there are some limitations as to which emails that are supported by this. And if you're using any email, for instance using variables in HTML or Unicode, then we will not use Blue Series Mail, even though you have specified to do that, and then we will revert back to the normal Interform400 email configuration. That concludes the additions to Interform400. So let's take a look at InterformNG now. For InterformNG, the first major change is that we now do require a license code in order to run the product. Previously, you could run it and then you would simply get this trial edition text on any kind of output that you would generate. But now you need a license code, and if you don't have any, you can register the first time installation and get a 7 days test license. It is of course also possible to request a longer running test code, and for that you should contact your local Interform support. For barcodes, we have also some changes. Previously it was a bit hard to define the barcodes and make sure exactly what size those output barcodes would be. And this change actually means that we need to convert the templates before we can use them in the new 2014 versions. So for that we have included a conversion tool. If you don't convert your templates, then we will convert the templates whenever they are opened, either in the designer or in the processor service. But let's take a look at this conversion tool. So when you upgrade, we will suggest to run this conversion tool, and you can also run it at any time. And if you run the conversion, it will take all of the original templates, designs as they are, zip them all together, and then place a zip file with the timestamp in the resources/templates directory. The converter will then convert these templates, and it will create two kind of templates. Templates without a barcode and templates with a barcode, or actually a barcode style. If there are no barcode styles, then the new templates will open in any version of InterformNG. If there are any barcode styles, then it will only open in 2014 and future versions of InterformNG. For the designer, there has also been some enhancements. You will now see some descriptions in the element list of each element, so you don't need to type in a description yourself in order to know what each element exactly does. If you have an element in error, then it's shown in red, so it's pointing out where you have a problem. The if element now also comes with an else group, so you can choose to have a group of elements to execute if a condition is true, and then alternative insert the elements in the else group to say these should be executed if the condition should happen not to be true. We have support for some special functions in the designer. For instance, for inserting the current page number or the total number of pages. And previously you would need to remember the names of these functions, but now we have a drop-down list, so it's just a matter of selecting the function from that. For emailing, we previously supported RTF for describing the contents of those outgoing emails, but now you can also use HTML. And when we are generating PDF, you can now add a URL link both on text and images. If you want to archive the output PDF, then you probably want an extra XML file as output that contains the index data, and that is actually possible to create now with InterformNG. We introduced splitting of XML files 1 year ago, but now it has been enhanced, so we can do a bit more dynamic splitting, select different split style sheets depending on the contents or the placement of the XML file, and it's fully integrated in the workflow. For the workflow rules, we can now have an empty condition, which is like a dummy condition, exactly like in autoforms control in Interform400. It means that a rule is always true, so that specific rule will always be selected. XPath is a way to call a lot of very efficient functions in InterformNG, but we have now made even a wider support for that, as we're now going with XPath 2 instead of only XPath 1.0. Finally, we have a couple of new modules. We have PDF security, exactly like you may know from Interform400, where we're able to add a digital signature to the PDF, so you can prove who created the PDF file and that the PDF file hasn't been changed after it has been created. You can also password protect the PDF and have limited access, so you can lock down copying of text, editing of the PDF, and even printing. Another new module is the JD Edwards Enterprise 1 connector, which makes it possible to create XML files from JD Edwards that we can use in InterformNG. Apart from these two new modules, we also have the existing modules text to XML, where we're able to grab a text file and convert it into XML for processing in InterformNG. And finally, embedding in PDF, so we can embed any files into an output PDF file. But let's look into the details of InterformNG. So first, a glance at the designer. So you can see here for the list of elements here that you get more help with the description of what happens in each of these elements. So you have a text. This is a constant text because of the C. You have a text here with an XPath expression, hence this X. If you have a text using a function, you see an F followed by the function name. So it makes it easier to see what is happening here. If you have an element in error, here I've inserted a text element outside my page, so that's why it comes up with this error. So it's shown in red, and if I try to say save, we're now informed that we have an error, and we can choose still to save in spite of the error with OK. I can also cancel my save here. Then we have our if, and the if element has now been extended with this else. So if I add any elements here at this point, then these will be the elements that are executed if this condition should happen not to be true. Okay, then we have some additions to the text element. For a text element, you can actually here under advanced settings, you can set either a fixed or a maximum width, and that width, in order to do that, you need first of all to remember that it's a number, and then you can type in the number here. But this can not only be a constant, it can also be an XPath expression, so you can actually do all sorts of calculations in order to find out how wide this text should be. The measurement here is in pels, so 240 pels equals 1 inch. So with a width here of 500 pels, it's just a bit more than 5 centimeters or 2 inches. This text, now we have reserved this 5 centimeters or a bit more, then we can actually choose the alignment within this designated area with the new width adjustment option on the text style. So we can choose to left adjust the text within that, to center it, and you may notice the change over here, or to right align it within those 5 centimeters. And an extra value of this feature where you can set up a specific width is something that you can use here for detail lines. If you want these nice columns and you have a flow area with a for each that is scanning all of the detail lines in your XML file, then you probably want a line for each of those in your XML. But you would probably want these nice columns, so for that you can for each of them set up a fixed width, and I've done that here with a fixed width of 1 inch for each of them. So if I want to change the size of any of those, I can simply type in the new size and it will adapt. So you can see immediately it simply adapts. I don't need to change the positions of all the others, and I can even rearrange the sequence here. If I select this and use my arrow keys, you can see also in the result view it immediately just simply rearrange the sequence. So that's definitely an area where this can be of great use. For the functions, you use that in a text element like so, and here for the functions you've previously needed to type them in, but now we have the drop down menu to type in or to output either, for instance, the current page number or the total number of pages in the current output. And then we have the changes for the barcode. Here we are selecting the barcode, and then in the previous element here we have the barcode style. So the barcode style sets up the attributes for the barcode. First select what type of barcode it is, the height, and that height is of course measured in whatever measurement I have selected. So currently it's in centimeters. Module width is currently 5, so that's 5,000 parts of an inch. And here the module ratio, which is the ratio between the thin and the wide lines of the barcode. So these properties here, they change depending on what I select, what type of barcode I select. For the subsequent barcode, it will use whatever barcode type I selected in the last barcode style, or I select a specific one here, so it doesn't need to be that last one. Yep, so moving on. For email output, yeah, we covered that. You can use HTML. And for the text and the images, you can use these links. And I've actually done that already for this. So if you want to add a link to either a text or an image, you just click the URL tab, and then you can type in the link. And that link can of course be a constant like this, but it can also be an XPath expression, so you can combine information from the XML with variables and do substringing, concatenation, and whatever you want in order to build up a quite complex URL. Another enhancement for PDF is that we're now able to archive, or actually create an index XML file for archiving, and you do that simply by typing in a label name here in the Advanced Settings tab. Let me just show you. So here you type in a label, and that would actually be the node added to the output XML file. So if any text element has this field filled out, then we will create an XML file named the same as the PDF with the extension .xml, and placed in the same output directory as the PDF. The PDF security module has been added. I think we have already covered that. You can select the drawer from which to select the paper that you want to print on for PCL, and that is actually selected on the page style. So let's find that. Have it here. So inside the page style, you can say what paper type do you want to use, and in order to use that, you need to go to the printer, and then for each drawer select what paper type you have in each of the drawers. And this is language independent, so if you have a different language on your printer, you should just select the equivalent type of paper. Color support. Well, we are printing in color in InterformNG as default, and normally that's no problem, as normal black and white printers, they are fully able to convert the color data stream into black and white, and then present a nice black and white output. And that with that you actually get a quite good quality of your output. But some older black and white printers, they are unable to do this conversion from a color data stream into a black and white output. So for that, we have added this metadata key. So if you set that metadata key to false, then we will create real black and white output, so it will also print out on any old black and white printer. With InterformNG, it is possible to print multiple pages on one, pages per side, multi-up, n-up, or whatever you call it. If you want that functionality, I suggest that you look into the label element of InterformNG. That's how it should be done. But we had a specific customer requesting the possibility to use exactly the same template for printing on two different printers with different size inside. So one printer has A4 and another A5, and they wanted to define a template in A5 and then reuse that single template for both. And that is possible with this metadata key. So let me just show you here what the output will be. So if you activate this option and you have 4 A4 pages, then the output will be 2 pages each A3. The size will simply be always double, and multi-op is always 2 pages on one. If you're changing the paper size in the middle of the output, then we will need to change to a new paper size in the output as well. So with multi-op true, this A4 will come out on a single page of A3, and then we will change to A4 for the remainder, and that will make an output like this, 2 A5 on an A4, and then we have the last page on a separate A4. Splitting, yeah, it has been possible to split, but now it's a bit easier, I would say. And with I have a little illustration here. We can split up an XML file, and I've chosen to do that in 2 ways. Here we want to split up the XML file if the incoming XML file has arrived in this input directory, inbox with an X. If it arrives in another directory called inbox with a KS, then we want to do something else. So here first with the inbox with an X, we want to split up the incoming XML file. So we will split it up for each node that's called document, and this is something that I have set up for the demo XML files of InterformNG. So this will create for that XML file 3 new smaller XML files, and each of those will be merged. They will all execute whatever actions you have specified here. So here we will create 1 PDF file for each of those new smaller XML files. If the XML file should happen to arrive in the inbox with a KS, then we are splitting in the same way, but here we have no actions. So depending on some setup in the input configuration, we can now choose to or work on the new resulting XML files, so they will come back into this list of rules, and the new ones will trigger this rule where we're looking at the contents of the XML file with XPath to look at the document number node in the XML file. And if it's 1004, then we want to create a PDF file with a specific file name. Another change here for the workflow is that if you leave a condition here, leave all of this blank, then it's like a dummy condition that's true for any XML file that comes in. So if you have such a rule, then I would suggest you to place it at the end to handle any XML file that hasn't been selected by any of the other ones higher on the list. Good. For the web interface, previously we shipped the web interface with port 8080. We found that was not that good an idea, so now the default port number is 1885. If you do an upgrade, we will keep the old port number, so you won't get a problem if you do an upgrade. If you do an upgrade to a 2014 version, then we will suggest you to run the conversion tool. It is, however, also possible at any time to run it manually, and let's take a look at that. So you can find it under Start, InterformNG and Template Converter. And when you run it, it will scan the resources/templates directory for any templates. And if the templates has already been converted, then they would look like this. You will see a template version and a designer version. The template version indicates if there has been any barcode styles have been found, because that's the important thing that has been changed for the 2014 versions. So it means any of the templates with the 2 in this column cannot be used in the older versions of InterformNG. So these are reserved for 2014 and future versions, where the other ones can be opened in any old version, even though they have been converted. The designer version 2 means that we have converted the template into version 2, and it's ready to be used in the 2014 versions. If there are any templates that hasn't already been converted, then the converter will assume that you probably want to convert them now, so it will as default select them all, and it's just a matter of clicking convert selected, convert them into the new format. Let's just remove. So that was a bit about the conversion. For JD Edwards we have this new module, so we are able to generate XML files directly from JD Edwards and make InterformNG run with that product as well. And as mentioned, you need a license code for a first time installation. You can request a 7-day license code either as a part of the installation, but you can also do that later on through the web interface as shown here. So you go into this screen and request a license code. That's also where you can load a production code through this screen. So that concludes the additions to the InterformNG version. Final thing here is to do a bit of advertising for videos on YouTube. So we are constantly adding new videos describing functionality in Interform400 and InterformNG, and there are actually a couple of videos here. So with that, I will thank you for your interest, and in case of any questions, feel free to contact your local Interform support. Thank you.